This is Harry Judd for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. We're in London. I'm delighted to be joined by Ben Shalom away from the press conference. We haven't caught up at all this week. First of all, Ben, how are we, mate?
Very well. Very excited. What a week so far. Good to be here. Good to have you.
Yeah, I mean, the press conference was as expected, as last time. It was lively, it was fun. You might have been glad that you stayed away a little bit in terms of where you were sat. You weren't in between them like you were last time, but again, they certainly delivered a great press conference by the team.
They're gold, aren't they? It's one that you don't have to do anything for. I was worried because the last press conference, that was incredible with Peter and Dimitri and everything. So we wanted to do it differently today, and I thought it was unbelievable in the cinema, the attendance again, the momentum again. But ultimately, they didn't want to get in the room again. They're both upset that it's almost like deja vu and they're having to go through it. But what was delivered was incredible. I think it's a true rivalry of the sport, true sort of yin and yang personalities coming together, clashing every time. It's what you want to see. It's what we need. They're two elite athletes. They're the fighters in their prime as well, and they're both extremely confident. And it has everything now, and it's just getting bigger and bigger.
You mentioned in the press conference, well, one of the questions that was asked in the press conference was about, is this the biggest fight you've ever promoted? I mean, historically for the sport, you'd have to maybe agree this is the biggest fight. But yeah, just talk to me about how much it means to you to put this fight on. Obviously, with last time, the postponement, the right decision was made by obviously yourself and the board. But just give me a little insight on how big this is for you personally, this fight at the weekend.
Yeah, you dream of the big events, you dream of the big box office events, which this feels like. And to do it, I think it was difficult because we knew we could make this fight a while ago, and we knew what a big one it was. And we obviously took Savannah on, and she hadn't headlined the show yet, and we had a lot of work to do in a short space of time. So we went up to Newcastle. She's headlined up there twice now, and she's built. Her confidence has grown in that sense. And to be able to put on the first women's night in the UK, to have the chief support that we managed to bring in as well, and obviously Lauren and Caris and Caroline and Shannon Ryan, Ebony Jones, Georgia O'Connor, just from top to bottom, it was a risk. And to do a women's night was always a risk. We could have easily gone for a short term, let's just stick a heavyweight fight on as chief support or a world champ, and maybe even put it on box office. But we decided this was an opportunity to do something crazy, to do something different, completely different, and that's what we want to do. That's why we want to be in the sport. Sometimes we'll make mistakes, sometimes we have to push the boundaries, and this is definitely pushing the boundaries, and I'm so proud because the way it's taken off, the amount of interest in this fight, the way it's sold, it's hard to conceive of that even a couple of years ago that a women's night could do this, and it has, and to be the first ones. And for me, this will be remembered for a very long time, and it's just good because it's going to go down in history. We've got the perfect fight, we've got the perfect athletes involved, and it's a special moment for us, but a special moment for the fighters as well.
Certainly making grounds in the sport at such a young age as a promoter yourself. Obviously, you started with Boxer. The first show was in April in 2018. Obviously now it's 2022. As I've got you sat here, you can't go anywhere from me at the moment. Just talk to me about your personal insight and how things have gone for you personally as boxer and promoter.
Well, it's a hard business. It's a crazy business. I actually started in 2016. I was helping out on my first shows, and it was only till 2018 where I did my own show by myself. And horrible business at times, really difficult. But we started this business because we see a lot of good in it. We see a lot of potential. We love the sport. There's a lot of problems as well, and we just felt we could add something different. And you don't see new blood come into the sport. It's very, very difficult to get into. We've had to do something that others couldn't have done and haven't had the resilience to, and we had many years where we didn't have a broadcast deal, and we just kept going and working extremely hard behind the scenes to be able to be in a position like we are now. And it's been a crazy journey. I don't really look back too much because we're always looking at what's next, and you have to be on your toes in this industry, especially coming in new. But it's been a tough journey. Obviously people don't see that. People see when you're on Sky and think, wow, he's landed on his feet here. But It was tough during the early days, and still is. It's a tough business, but it's one we love. It's one we think we can do a lot for, and we think we can come at it with a different perspective. And so far, so good. Still early days, very early days, but it's a bright future, I think.
Obviously, the main event, Savannah Marshall. I saw a statistic in the Independent newspaper where they said that when Savannah turned pro in 2017, there were only 7 licensed female British fighters. Now, there's over 50, and 10 of them are on this bill. It's just immense, isn't it, really?
It's crazy because it feels deeper than that. Obviously, we have a lot of female fighters that are doing really well, but yet it's crazy to think how the sport's developed. I didn't realise there were only 7 in 2017. That is mental. It just shows where the sport's got to, where it's come to, and credit to the fighters involved, because they're stars now. Like Katie Taylor and Natasha Jonas and Nicola Adams were the ones that broke through. But now the depth, that's the difference, isn't it? As you say, you've got the 7 fighters there. Now you've got 50 fighters, but you now have proper rivalries, like the likes of Mayer and Baumgardner, and obviously Shields Marshall as well. Yeah, wow, for the sport to hear that, it's madness, and to be, this is a combination of a lot of hard work from a lot of people, and there's so many bad things that have happened in this, well, there's so many things that happen in the sport that sometimes you're not proud of. This is something to be proud of. This is massive, monumental, and I hopefully people that are on the outside, that aren't you regular boxing fans, can see the sport for what it truly is, which is an opportunity for anyone, an opportunity for people from all backgrounds, and now a massive opportunity for women as well.
Let's talk about you and your interest in the sport. I mean, you may not remember, but I first met you at the National ABAs in Manchester. I think it might have been 2019 or might have been 2020. My recollection's not really good. So you've obviously got a deep interest in the sport. You obviously, with the Olympic side as well, you've got loads of GB athletes, etc. You obviously see longevity in what you're doing, and especially with your stable, Ben.
Yeah, I started in the small horse scene and the amateur scene, so I love the sport, and that's why I see so much good in it. I think as a boxing fan, you only see the really real pinnacle. You see the big shows on Sky, on BT, and on DAZN. You don't see the rest of the sport, and it's an incredible place. It's people that love what they do, because there's not much in it for a lot of people, and that's that we had to fight through all of that. And I think the thing for me about boxing is it's the truest sport in the world. It really is. People look at it and it might look dirty, it might look intimidating, but for the fighters, it's not like that. It's the most honest sport when it's done right. It's the most honest sport in the world, and I think it's got so much more potential. I think for so long it's been a short-term business, and it's been profits over anything, and it's been next week over anything, and that limits the sport. And broadcasters are always asking themselves the question: do they want to be involved in boxing? Sponsors are as well. You want to give them every reason to be, because it's a sport with no language barrier. It's shown, everyone understands it. It's one of the oldest sports in the world, and it can be massive. It can be monumental, and that's the long term we see. But it only gets there if you take long-term decisions and you take responsibility with your position. And we feel a lot of responsibility in our position. We are new, but we want to make a positive impact. And we feel it is needed, as in all sports, all great sports and all great businesses, and everything needs to change from time to time. And we hope we can be a change for good. But yeah, it's been a natural journey, because we've seen it from the lowest to the top, and we still have a lot of roots in the grassroots, and why we like doing the tournaments, and why we like signing fighters at the start of their careers as well. So yeah, it's a start, very much the start, but there's so much potential in the sport, and the fighters now coming through, I think the future's very bright.
There was so much production with the first fight week. It was great. Yeah, that boat was fantastic. The press conference, like we said, was fantastic as well. Was it hard to keep the momentum going for this week?
I was worried. It's the team really that pulled out all the stops. To be obviously on a boat last time, in a cinema this time, all the entertainment. Saturday night will be full of it. We've got dancers, massive performers, people from all around the world coming in for this show. So it goes down to them, because they're young. We're a massively young team, and we want to take boxing into places that it's not been before. We want to make sure it has a different spin on it now. We want to make sure that people are proud to be involved in it and can see that it's a forward-thinking sport. We wanted boxing to be one of the leaders out of the sports and pushing new boundaries, and that's what the team do. And so this was a challenging week because you have to. It was one of the hardest moments, 24 hours outside of one of our biggest shows, for that to happen. But the way they've come back, reset, and had a press conference like today, completely outside the box, didn't want to do the same thing, and couldn't be prouder, because to be honest, I was concerned that you could never create that natural buzz that we had on Fight Week, but it's just built and built and built, and now it feels even bigger.
I was concerned that we wouldn't have the same card again, but there's been no news, no one's opted out, there's been no complaints, no nothing. It's the same card, the same people, and there's so many different promotional companies and they're all working together. Were you worried or concerned that we wouldn't have the same card as we did for when the first fight week?
You do get worried, because fighters can be funny, and they can have, once that happens and you have to start recontracting them, and they're all sort of second guessing, and especially when it's 50-50 fights, do they feel ready for it? The US fighters having to go back to the US and then come back, that's difficult as well. And there were times where we thought we couldn't get it back on again. We had to get the venue, we had to get the undercard, we had to get everything. But luckily, and it credit to the fighters, because a lot of these fighters didn't have that dream when they started, because there was nothing to see. If you were Clarissa and Savannah when they started, there wasn't this show, there wasn't these superstar events, there wasn't these rivalries, and they've done it because they love the sport. And that's why I think it's different with this generation. It's almost like the breakthrough generation for the women's sport, and they found a way. They knew they were fighting for more than just themselves, and they've all kept on track. So delighted to make sure we come through that, because it was difficult, but I think the correct decision was made, because this is anything but subdued. This is extravagant. This is entertainment at its biggest, and it's going to be a huge celebration on Saturday night. And most importantly, two ridiculous fights.
I pretty much know the answer to this anyway, but why didn't you choose to go with Sky Sports Box Office? Why put it on just Sky Sports main event anyway?
Because, and for people that say we couldn't have done this on Box Office, we could have easily done the first women's pay-per-view, easily. Again, it comes down to short-term versus long-term. Do we want to squeeze out as much money as we can on Saturday night, or do we think, you know what, this is a major breakthrough for the sport? Can we get this to over 1 million people? Can this be shown into every household? Can this be shown as the best advert we've had for a long time in British boxing? And we think it can. And the all-female card was the same feeling. It's expensive. We've got two main events on the same card, and it's not Box Office. But we think it's going to be remembered for a long time. We want to have events that go down in boxing folklore, and it's the ones that we talk about. And I genuinely believe Shields Marshall is going to be one of those events that is there in the boxing calendar in 10, 20, 30 years to come.
If it goes successfully, and we all hope in the boxing world that it does, been working in the amateurs for a long time. In the amateurs, we have the Winter Box Cup. That's a yearly all-female amateur boxing event. If this event goes successfully at the weekend, could we see an inaugural thing? It happens every year, or something like that, something similar?
I hope so. I do hope so. I think it is. I'll be honest, it's extremely expensive. It's also, you have to get the right fights. How many Shields Marshalls have we had? How many Maya Baumgartners have we had? Not many. So you've got to do it at the right time. I think now's a good time. I think in future, there's no need. We're not doing this for virtue signalling reasons. We're doing this for boxing. For people to look on Saturday night and say, wow, that's all women fighters, and that's a sold-out O2, and that has got this level of interest. We want to show how big the sport is, not just the women's boxing, but how big the sport is and how big the sport can be. Whether it happens every year, I don't know. Yeah. But I think now the timing of this should catapult the sport, and we'll start to see a lot more females coming into the sport and believing that there's a big career path rather than just being one or two fighters on the card.
You mentioned to try and give it as much publicity as possible. You may be able to give me more information on this. So during the first fight week, you had a partnership with England Boxing. Again, is that still going ahead? Like every £5 of every boxer ticket sold via an England Boxing amateur member will be reinvested back into gyms. Yeah, is that still going ahead?
Yeah, this is the amateur sport and the professional sport need to be more joined together. That's one of the things that we want to look at. It's really underfunded, the sport, in so many ways. And we want this to be a journey that all of boxing goes on. Again, it comes down to responsible promotion. We're the ones paid by the broadcaster, not the board. We have to take responsibility for the whole sport. And we want to make sure that amateur sport is looked after. We're still looking at ways maybe we can get some amateur tournaments onto Sky and start to show more light on the amateur scene. And we've only been in 12 months. We're not going to change the world straight away, but there's little things that we can do and things that we can start to put in place that we think will see benefits over a longer period. And that's what we're trying to do at the moment. And England boxing is very much part of this event.
One thing that has changed from the first fight week was now the introduction of the Elizabeth belt. Just tell me more on that one, mate.
Yeah, to be honest, that's Maurizio seeing a good opportunity for promotion, but for the fight as well. And it's a beautiful belt, very fitting. Obviously, it was a terrible week for the country, and now we have a fitting tribute. And people will always now remember this fight in association with what happens, and people will always remember that it was delayed because of the Queen Elizabeth's passing, and it's fitting, and it's another really important thing on the line for Shields and Marshall. If there isn't anything already, it's got all the belts, it's got the Ring magazine, it's now got the Elizabethan belt. Just makes it extra special. If it couldn't be already, it's the biggest fight in women's boxing history. It really is. It has everything, and it's in the UK, which has become the home of women's boxing. So to be able to bring everyone over here, to have it in London, it's a big achievement for us, big achievement for the board, big achievement for anyone that's ever taken an interest in women's boxing.
Sold out event, O2, correct?
Got a few £25 tickets up in the rafters. We expect them to go. I mean, as I say, when we put on this event, people are telling me you'd be lucky to sell 5,000 tickets with just an all-female card. So it's incredible. It's going to be a sold out on Saturday night, and the atmosphere. I think it's going to be a different type of crowd. I think 35% of the ticket buyers are females, which is so different. Usually it's less than 5%. And again, it just goes into, and people might say, again, virtue signaling, all this crap. But at the end of the day, if the sport isn't accessible and people don't feel comfortable coming to the events and don't trust what they see in the ring and don't trust how it's being scored and don't trust that the fighters are taking things and doing things in the right way, then the sport will never grow. And it might be great for a few of us, but we need this sport to grow. We need more money to come into this sport. We need more regularity. We need more attention on it. And again, that's why Saturday night will be a breakthrough moment.
Obviously, you mentioned the troubles of last week. Is this where you see boxing back on the right path again?
I hope so. I think so. I mean, we've seen some amazing things this year, some great fights this year. I think this is a landmark moment, and I hope last week was difficult because it starts again the mistrust of people outside of the sport, as the sponsors, the broadcasters of boxing. We need to build that trust. Saturday night will go a long way to doing that. I'm sure there'll be more events to come that can help as well.
Yeah, because obviously last week was damaging. You mentioned the investment into the sport, investment into the amateurs as well, the interest in the amateurs. Let's obviously go back to last week. I did see you on TalkSport. You spoke quite passionately about the problems that were going on last week, but just take me to your instant reaction when you found out the news, like we all did last Wednesday, Ben.
I just thought, and the reason I spoke at that time is because it hadn't been called off at that time. I know the board had prohibited it. I just thought once someone fails a test, that's it. Maybe naively, but that's the way it is, and that's the way it should be, and that was all it was. And it's just a shame because that's all people are talking about now, about boxing. Like, that is just, why would we want to go through that? Why would we even risk that? That's not what we want. We want to be on the back pages for the right reasons, and that was all it was. And I just wanted to make sure that event didn't go ahead. And I'm not gloating. That was a terrible week for anyone in boxing, for me as well. Yeah. And but if it had gone ahead, it would have been even worse. So I'm glad it didn't, and we move on. And what will be now, and the board will look at it, and everyone else, and it can run its natural course. But yeah, it wasn't a good week. And what more can I say? But yeah, more things to come.
You've worked with Chris as well. Again, a personal relationship. How thankful are you, again, that it didn't go ahead for him more than anything as well?
Look, he's got it. It didn't go ahead. He's a fighter. He'd have got in the ring with anyone, and that's what he's like, because he's a true fighting man, and that's what he loves. That's what he does for a living. You saw. I think I'm gutted for him, because that was hard what he did, going down to that weight, taking it so seriously. It was his biggest, I think his biggest ever payday. Massive, massive fight. And it was all taken away from him with a day or two to go. So I went to see him. I spoke to him, and look, he's come out of it well, hasn't he? I think people can see Chris now for who he is. I've always seen that, and I really like him as a fighter. I think he can still achieve a huge amount, and I hope he gets the fights he deserves now. But that's who I felt sorry for. Whether I'm glad for his sake that he didn't get in, it's hard, because he really wanted to get in that ring. I think I'm glad for boxing that he didn't get in the ring.
I think moving forward now, surely we're looking for just more transparency within boxing, Ben. Transparency from, I guess, people like yourselves as well. I think that's one of the main things, and transparency from governing bodies as well. I think that's one of the main things I think that's come out of last weekend, Ben.
Yeah. And it's not just doping; it's everything. As you said, the sport is a strange one, and then, as I say, this is why we're in it. I wouldn't be here just to add to the mess or add to the business side. We're here because we see problems in the sport. We believe we can change them. We believe we have a different perspective. We don't have the old connections and the friendships and the this and the that make sure we act in a certain way. We have a lot of people that want to stop us progressing, because probably we do see things differently, and we're pretty honest people, and we care about the sport, and a lot of the time we do see a lot of things that shouldn't be how it, we're in the 21st century now. Boxing shouldn't still be operating like it was. I think a lot of people are committed to that. I think hopefully it was a watershed moment last week, where you see the tip of the iceberg and the public see it, and it's broken into the mainstream, and maybe there'll be more pressure now. But yeah, transparency is key, and openness, and in the sense of how the sport is run, and maybe a little less going at each other, maybe a little less trying to put each other down, maybe a little less saying, we made more money than you yesterday. Like, this is a sport. Let's focus on building the sport in the best possible way and making it the greatest thing that it can be. And I think that will happen now.
In terms of this weekend then, again, you may be able to put more information to me at all, but yeah, in terms of testing this weekend, I mean, can you confirm who's been tested, who's not been tested? How does it all work for this weekend?
So we're responsible for, in terms of the testing for the undercard and the main event, the chief support we've brought in from Top Rank and Matchroom. Okay. So they're responsible for their testing of that fight. So I can comment on Shields and Marshall. VADA's been in place for that. They've both been tested multiple times. I don't even want to get into the flinging of shit, because it's just I'm trying to stay out of it, but I think people, look, it irritates. All I can say is our fighters have been tested, and VADA multiple times, and I think anyone that suggests otherwise is clearly trying to hurt the sport even more. But yeah, they've been tested multiple times. Our fighters, the Top Rank and Matchroom bout that we've brought in, they're responsible for their testing. So you'd have to ask them.
Moving forward, then, we mentioned Chris and someone you worked with before, Liam Beefy Smith, who we've seen recently as well, has come out and said that he'd take the Eubank fight. Is there any discussions you've had with Liam? We know he's eager for that one. Arguably, that's why he signed with you as well. So, any discussions had?
Look, Liam wants the big fights. He thought he would fight Eubank before. He didn't see Judd-Benn coming. No. I don't think anyone did. I didn't even think that fight was possible, to be honest. But he still wants that fight, and it's a big fight, and I think that's the fight the fans want to see. He's not holding on to it. He knows anything can happen in boxing. It's one he wants. It's one we would love to see as fans, but ultimately it's up to Chris what he wants to do next.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing at the moment. Moving swiftly on as well, Dillian White. Again, there are rumours that you guys having discussions about signing him. Just give us an update what's going on with that, mate.
Yeah, I think he wants to go fight by fight. He wants a certain type of fight next, and ultimately, the broadcasters on my side have to be interested and things like that. And we're very interested in Dillian White, but we'll wait for the right opportunity and the right fight for us. And yeah, I wish him all the best. I think he'll fight in November. I think it'll be a comeback fight of some sort. But I wish him all the best. I think he's a good guy, and it'd be good to get him back, see him back in the ring. I think the heavyweight division is good. Everyone should stay active. Let's hope to see the big fights happen sooner rather than later. But no, Dillian's next fight won't be with us.
Huey as well. We all send him best wishes. But have you spoken to him personally?
I have, and his mum and dad, and I think he's look. We're searching for answers. He's got long COVID. We're trying to find a solution there, and he's a good guy. He was coming in. He's 27 years old, so he feels like he's coming into a prime now. So, yeah, it's difficult because he gets a lot of grief, Huey, and I don't really get it because there's a lot of 27-year-olds or a lot of 30-year-olds, even in the heavyweight division, who haven't fought anyone yet, and he's done a lot in a short space of time. He's boxed since he was 11 years old. He's never really had a break, and I think he needs a break because it's a serious illness that he's got, and I'm hoping next year he can have a big year, but for now he needs to rest. And Michael Hunter's number one in the WBA still, and we expect him to fight Daniel Dubois at some point, and we'll just have to wait on the governing body for that.
On a personal note, I'm just absolutely buzzing for that November 12th in Manchester. I'm a massive fan of Ricky, and as well, it's a dream come true as well for yourself, though. It's going to be a huge, huge night. Yeah,
Ricky was the first. He was at my first ever show that I promoted, and he helped me right from the start. He actually, if you remember, the first Ultimate Boxers, they won a golden robe. That's what they won. And Ricky presented my first one, and he was always great with us, and it was at the Manchester Arena. So, yeah, it's a bit of fun. It's good to see him back. We've got some unbelievable fights on that card as well. Dalton Smith, who I think is one of Jonas unifying again. Dalton Smith against Casey Benjamin. Casey Benjamin's an unbelievable fighter. I think that people don't realise perhaps. Not the risk, but fair play for Dalton taking that fight. He doesn't need to. He's probably one of the hottest prospects in British boxing right now. And for him to take that fight on our card is really good. Brad Ray steps up against Tyler Denny.
One of Ricky's stablemates as well, yeah?
Yeah.
One of his fighters, sorry.
He's in the Hatton Gym with Blaine, and they've done a lot of work, and he's a young middleweight. And then also Fraser Clark, who we've had grief about his opponents, and I will say, when you're having to find an opponent in 24 hours because someone pulls out, it's difficult, and there's always a risk. But he's fighting Kamil Sokolowski. We all know him. He's a tough, durable guy, and we'll see what Fraser's made of. It's obviously only his fourth fight. Yeah. People need to remember that. But we've got big hopes for Big Fraser, and it's going to be a massive night in Manchester. Ricky's actually a separate. We'll be running our card, and then at 10:30, then Ricky will run separately, but it will all be live on Sky Sports on November the 12th.
You'll be able to sit back and watch that one then, Ben.
I'll be able to enjoy it and enjoy it, have a laugh. Be good to see. I think, to be honest, it's sold really well. Ricky Hatton's he's a legend where I'm from, and people will look forward to just seeing him again and being around him.
Last word on this weekend, mate. What can people expect for this fight on Saturday night?
Everything. As I say, it will go down in boxing folklore. This is a huge night. Anyone that's a boxing fan or even remotely a sports fan needs to watch this, will watch this. The chief support's incredible. Yep. And we're going to see the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 brightest stars of the future of the women's sport, especially Lauren Price, most decorated amateur we've ever seen, already an MBE. It's amazing to be promoting someone like that who's accomplished that much already, and obviously Caris Artingstall as well, who's going to do incredibly well in the professional game, and Caroline Dubois. So you've seen the future, and you're also seeing a level that we've never seen women's boxing at before with those 2 fights. No one can call it. It's the styles, it's everything, it's the personality. The entertainment's going to be off the scale as well, and I can't wait. I'm just glad that everyone can see it. It'll be on Sky Showcase as well, so even if you don't have Sky Sports, you can watch this fight.
I hurt all the girls that I fight, but I will come out victorious.
Clock ticking till I become undisputed middleweight champion of the world.
This is another moment that my hand would be risen. I've fully prepared myself for a war.